Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Reckless Paradise podcast. I am your host, Dystro, and tonight's episode, it is a Rivalries episode. Kicking off April, almost said March, kicking off April in a huge way. This is a rivalry that I've always wanted to talk about on this channel. And I don't think we've done it before. I mean, if we have, like, this is just probably a revamped version of it. But the rivalry in question for tonight, it is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Bret the Hitman Hart. Um, I mean, what is there not to say about this rivalry? So this one is kind of it's a it's not cult it's like a culture thing, but this is one of the most like iconic rivalries of that era. Their feud spanned for between 96 and 97, because 97 was kind of when Bret the Hitman Hart was on its way out. And plus this was months before Montreal Screwjob. And you know, I think on both sides of the coin, Bret the Hitman Hart and Austin were both equals in their own way. Like Bret is more technically sound and more methodical, and also where Austin's more ruthless and reckless. Um, so this kind of spanned, like I said, between 96 to 97. But their first interaction was Survivor Series of 96. Because this was like when Bret was like I said, like he was kind of like he took some time off. And Austin was kind of like making his name very well known around that time frame. And this was like when Bret the Hitman Hart comes back and all that stuff, and that's like the infamous kind of Austin promo, like if you put the S in front of the Hitman, that's what you think. That's my exact depiction of Bret Hart. And then they have the match at Survivor Series in '96. That's where Austin gets thwarted by Bret the Hitman Hart. And then fast forward into 97, or well, I guess, yeah, 97. Going into the Royal Rumble that year, this was when like Austin eliminated Bret the Hitman Hart. But no, Hart eliminated Austin, but the refs didn't see it. So then Austin gets back into the ring and eliminates Bret the Hitman Hart, and then goes into WrestleMania 13, which is an all-time classic match. A no holds barred submission match between Austin and Bret. I mean, even though despite losing, he transitions into the babyface, and then Bret the Hitman Hart transitions into a heel. The infamous double turn of the century. Um, I mean, like, if you want, like not nitpick, but you gotta like dissect like their rivalry as a whole, because they've fought at basically almost every single pay-per-view, if not like had an interaction at some pay-per-views. Like their first encounter was at the Sun City Super Bowl, which was like a singles match. And pardon the technical difficulties. Sorry about that. So like I was saying, like their first interaction was the Sun City Super Bowl. Went 20 minutes, all that stuff. So the first encounter between Steve Austin and Bret the Hitman Hart wasn't at Survivor Series 1996 as many people thought it was, but it was a special show called Sun City Super Bowl in South Africa. It says Bret's younger brother Owen undertook commentary duties, taking a closer look at this contest. Uh, this was a just strong 20-minute bout that closed out the show, and it was a back and forth encounter between the pair with a sign of things to come. It says the Bret the Hitman Hart prevailed with the inside cradle in a match 2 months before his triumphant return to TV at Survivor Series that year, and then Survivor Series '96. As we've probably alluded to on the show, maybe sometimes before. So this is like when Bret took a hiatus um, from losing the championship to Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 12 the year prior. And then Austin won the '96 King of the Ring that year. And, it was like a collision course for Bret the Hitman Hart and Steve Austin. And of course, I mean, they tore the house down in a fantastic wrestling match at Survivor Series. And then the excellence of execution showed no signs of ring rust. Um, it says Austin pushed Hart to the limit, but in winning return for Hart, who became the number one contender and the first challenger for Psycho Sid's WWE Championship. And then they've faced in a tag team match before. It was Bret and Savio Vega versus Steve Austin and Farouk on an episode of Raw before the turn of the year in '97. Or it was December 30th, 1996. Um, and then the Royal Rumble in '97, which was won. I know that was. I think that was by Austin, right? Yeah, it was Austin. Um, and then they've both had their chance at redemption in Final Four, because this was when Shawn Michaels lost his smile and didn't want to lose and all that stuff. So the match that they had was Austin, Bret, Psycho Sid, or no, not Psycho Sid. It was Bret, Austin, Taker, and Vader. At In Your House Final Four. Uh, which, if I could be honest with you, the In Your House pay per views are really, really good. It's kind of like one of those things where it's like kind of like a B pay per view, but it doesn't matter really. So we had that match. Um, because like that's when Bret wins it. So then it says after the '97 Rumble, Steve Austin and Shawn Michaels were penciled in for to a clash at the WWE Championship in the main event of WrestleMania 13, but then that failed to materialize as Shawn Michaels lost his smile and vacated the WWE Championship. Days later, Austin, Bret Hart, Taker, and Vader clashed in a unique fatal four-way for the gold, with pinfall submissions again thrown over the top rope as methods to be eliminated. Um, so, Bret wins that match, obviously. But he doesn't defend the championship at WrestleMania. Uh, that's because Psycho Sid wins the championship and all that stuff. Um, it's just, I was just like, okay, that's kind of weird. Um, but, this leads to the all time classic match between Austin and Bret at WrestleMania 13. Excuse me. With Ken Shamrock as the guest referee. It just saves that show. Like, if that one match wasn't on that card, I think WrestleMania 13 would be an all-time like shitty show. But it just saves it for better or for worse. So then we go to In Your House, Revenge of the Taker. This was um, a number one contenders match for the WWE Championship again. Uh, Steve Austin versus Bret Hart. I mean, what a shocker! It's like they always have very very good chemistry together, always. Um, because they clashed once again for another number one contenders match to determine the next challenger for the Taker's WWE Championship. They stole the show at WrestleMania 13 and should have main evented the titular event, which that should have main evented to be honest with you. But they headlined the following in your house event. I mean, golly. The bitter rivals produced a good wrestling match that didn't reach the heights of their other two encounters. It says ultimately Austin registered his sole victory over Hart a bit via disqualification as the Hart Foundation interfered with Austin, going on to face the Undertaker for the WWE Championship. So then 24 hours later, they clashed in a street fight. I mean, Austin's a brawler. Bret Hart can brawl like somewhat. Um, it says 24 hours after In Your House, Austin and Hart faced each other in a street fight. None of them were wearing their traditional ring gear and sported jeans, which, I mean, truth be told, like if you're having a street fight, you're gonna be wearing the jeans. This turned out to be their final one-on-one encounter against each other. And then it says Austin showed no signs of slowing down when he unleashed a brutal beatdown on the excellence of execution. Austin even applied Hart's own sharpshooter on him and refused to break up the hold. Hart was carried out of the arena into an ambulance, and then Austin attacked Hart in the ambulance until the Hart Foundation halted Austin from causing further damage. So, then we go to Canadian Stampede in '97 in your house, one of the all-time greatest 10-man tag team matches of all time. This has the Hart Foundation, which was Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, Owen Hart, British Bulldog, and Brian Pillman. Um, I don't know how Brian Pillman got into the Hart Foundation. Um, but I mean, he's there. And plus, if you think about it, Bret Hart or Brian Pillman and Steve Austin, they used to be a tag team back in the day in WCW, and because they were called I think it was called the Hollywood Blondes. Yes, Hollywood Blondes, and then they kind of like broke up and all that stuff, which is it was kind of interesting. And then that's when we get the all-time term of like Pillmanizing his leg. Because that's when Austin kind of broke Brian Pillman's leg and Pillmanized him. Because Austin was kind of destined for bigger things in WCW, but never came to fruition. Um, and then Brian goes to WWF, does some good things there, because then he gets kind of inserted into the Hart Foundation thing. I mean, it was actually a pretty cool get for that group. Because like Brian Pillman, to no fault of his own, he's a small guy, but he's a very athletic guy. And like I wish they could have just done more with him in WWF. Like in WCW, he was like a 2 or 3 time light heavyweight champion. Like he was I think he was in Four Horsemen. And then like they just didn't do really much anything else with him. Like he could have been a United States champion. I mean, he could have been, or well, he was World Tag Team Champion with Austin at one point in WCW. Um, but he could have done very very much more in WCW, I think. But I think it was just that glass ceiling because of his size and his stature. um, but then like goes to WWF. I don't know if he wins the light heavyweight championship there, or even like a cruiserweight championship or something. I mean, we'll guess we'll just never get to see that to come to fruition at that point because like like many years ago, he had sadly passed away. And it's kind of like one of those things like, what if, like what if Brian Pillman didn't, get into that car crash and all that stuff, and like, do you think he would have like had like a bigger, longer career without the painkillers and all that stuff? Like that would be a good what if episode in the future. Um, so we had Hart Foundation, which was, like I said, Owen Hart, Jim Danville, Neidhart, Brian Pillman, British Bulldog, and Bret Hart versus Steve Austin, Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and Legion of Doom, which is Animal and Hawk. Um, it's an all-time classic 10-man tag team match for all the right reasons. And plus this was like give the people what they want, like give all these people, that were in Canada for Canadian Stampede, a good babyface win because, just in a few short months, like everything's gonna come crashing down on them and a lot of things are gonna be gone. Because like I said, like Pillman shortly, not too long in the future, at that current point in time, he passes on. Owen Hart at Over the Edge 99. In 2 years, he passes on. British Bulldog, like, he passes on in a few short years. Um, and then, not too long ago, a few years ago, Jim the Anvil Neidhart passed away and all that stuff. So, like, it's kind of like one of those things where it's just like, if everybody was healthy and if everything went the right way, I think a lot of those people, especially, Owen Hart, Bulldog, Brian Pillman, and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, would still be here today, just kind of like giving the knowledge to the youngsters and all that stuff. And like, I mean, I think Owen Hart could still probably go, despite his age, of course. But I think like if he was still here, he would have he would have had so many great, awesome matches, like outside of WWF. Like, I think he would have done some like indie dates, like Ring of Honor and all that stuff, like NWA stuff, like maybe some TNA stuff, maybe. Like, I would have loved to see Owen Hart versus AJ Styles in TNA. That would have been so good. Um, I mean, like shit, like he could have maybe wrestled freaking Brian Danielson, the American Dragon, on the indie circuit. Like that'd been crazy. Um, but like we won't get to see that, sadly. um, so this was their final pay-per-view meeting between Austin and Bret Hart. And then because Hart and his Hart Foundation received a deafening homecoming reception in Canada as they squared off against Austin, Ken Shamrock, Goldust, and the former WWE Tag Team Champions, the Road Warriors. Um, so then we had a 6-man tag team flag match, which was the Hart Foundation versus Steve Austin, Taker, and Dude Love. That's a Nightmare Blunt rotation. That actually kind of sounds pretty good, actually. Um, so I mean that's what you expect, like in Canada, obviously. And that was when it kind of like was kind of dwindling down a little bit. Because that was the final match between Austin and Bret Hart. And then Bret goes into a feud with Undertaker, clashing at SummerSlam that year in '97. I would say this is just me though, but I would say like majority of that feud is all Bret the Hitman Hart, kind of getting more W's than losses. I mean, it actually helped. It helped define Austin as a character that is very enjoyable as a fan favorite. And plus, like he's a tough redneck from Texas. Like what is there not to love? Um, and I think it's just because like if Austin had come in at a wrong time, or like the wrong time, I think we would have never gotten to see the 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 rise of Stone Cold Steve Austin in popularity. And I think like if Bret the Hitman Hart wasn't there, like if he had just retired at that point, because when I did the career dives episode on Bret Hitman Hart or Bret Hart, like he was in wrestling like in the 70s and 80s. Like he had a 20-year career already in going into 90 in the late 90s. So like he could have retired at any point, and that was like when like I was saying, like, he signed a 20-year contract. So like his contract, if he was still wrestling, let's just say that if he was still wrestling from when he had signed the contract, I think in like 97, yeah, it was 97, he would have still been active, like I say that loosely, active till 2017. I don't think his body would have still been able to go after that. Um, and I don't know if like if Austin, I think like if a lot of things had changed, like talked about the Hart Foundation stuff, like I was saying, like if Owen Hart didn't give the Owen driver to Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think Austin would have still been an active, like full time personality and wrestler without the major brain damage. And I think it's just like if Austin had come in at the wrong place at the wrong time, I don't think we would have gotten that feud between Hitman Hart and Austin. I think it was like good, right place, right time, because Austin was on the rise and Hart was kind of on the way out, like I said. Because the straw that broke the camel's back was Austin or no Hart losing to Shawn at Survivor Series in Montreal, and that's when he went to WCW. And didn't really do much of anything in WCW. I mean, he had like a four. He was like a four-time United States champion for WCW, a two-time World Heavyweight Champion, like a tag team champion, but that was it. Whereas, like, same thing with WWF. Like, he was a Grand Slam champion in WWF, WWE, whatever. Um, but it's just like, like I said, wrong. If it was like wrong place, wrong time, I don't think Austin would have been even close to what we know of him now. I think he will eventually get there, but like I said, I think Austin and Bret Hart were two foils that were on the right side of history, and they were two people that Austin just didn't like Bret. Bret didn't like Austin and all stuff. And it was just like it was just made for good television and good matches down the line. Um, I think like what I had said about the what if, like with Brian Pillman thing, I think that'd be a good what if episode in the future. So I'm gonna put a little pin in that. So we have made it to the very end of this video of this episode. If you like what you heard, please make sure to follow us on all social media links in the description below, which will take you to the Linktree page, which will take you to our Instagram pages, Twitter pages, the podcast Reddit pages on there, my gaming YouTube channels on there. And let us know what you think about the Bret Hart versus Austin rivalry in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys think. So, tonight's song of the night, it is going to be a Daughtry song. I know, very, very rare here. It is going to be It's Not Over by Daughtry, and it's from self-titled album in 2007. I know it, because I own it. And, yeah, there is a music video for it. I do know that. Yeah, that's it. And I will see you guys next Thursday. Peace.